Yes, next presentation in the parallel sessions. Ciara, Wigham, and Malorie, both coming at Trapani, both coming from the University of Clermont-Auvergne in France. And myself, and actually also Rick de Graaf, we carried out a virtual exchange with our students in the educational master's program. And that's something that we will be showcasing with you right now. So virtual exchange and teacher education. Why virtual exchange? So I started piloting virtual exchanges or telecollaboration at that time in 2005. And I saw with my own students how meaningful and how engaging those virtual exchanges with students from other parts of the world. In my case, it was students from Spain or students from Latin America were for their learning process, how enriching everything was. So the idea that we have is that virtual exchange should be the heart of the curriculum of foreign languages. Why? Because in those virtual exchanges, they develop key competencies which are essential in our society, okay? Such as communicative competencies, social competencies, collaborative competencies, digital competencies, intercultural competencies. So if we are preparing the teachers for the future, this should be an integral part of our educational system. Yeah. Okay, so we have two ways of doing this. The traditional way would be, okay, since this is very important, we give our students research papers to read about, and so develop their knowledge. But what we want to do is to combine it with experiential learning, with Kolb ideas that you learn by doing, by reflecting and by learning from this reflection as well. So in our cases, our students were reading a lot about all these key topics, and they were engaged also in virtual exchanges. Okay, so
the virtual exchange we're going to talk to you about today is a virtual exchange that we've ran for the past 2 years between Utrecht University and Université Clermont-Auvergne. It's run at a master's level program. In Utrecht, it's part of the language teachers master's program in a module that's language curriculum. In Clermont, I was able to introduce into the first year of the master's program for English language teachers a module of 18 hours called Training for Pedagogical Innovation, Telecollaboration, which is a synonym for virtual exchange. Last year, the module involved 48 trainee teachers. We ran the virtual exchange over 6 weeks, so it's quite intense in November, December time period, just before Christmas. And the overall goal for both sides of both participant institutions is to introduce virtual exchange to teacher trainees and to get them involved in designing tasks for virtual exchange, with the idea that once they've met their partner in the other country, who's also going on to teach English or French as a foreign language, they could then put those tasks into place in their schools when they're in post. So we organized the exchange around 4 tasks. I won't go into each task right now because I'll be doing that in a second, but we based the tasks with a pre-task phase so that they could prepare for the encounter, the main task phase, which was either synchronous or asynchronous, depending on the task that we were doing together. And for us, it was really important to have a post-task, which was developing reflective skills for these trainee teachers to help them think about looking back, what could we have done better, looking forward, how could we put what we could have done better into place next time, and how can we develop this once we're in schools in post. So the first task that we asked the trainees to do was language biographies. We used a platform called Flip, which is an asynchronous video forum platform used through Microsoft. The objective here was for the partners to share their multicultural backgrounds, their intercultural encounters, and really think in their daily life, when do I use languages, where do I use languages, how and who with whom do I use languages as part of Plurilingual Europe. So the students recorded videos where they introduced themselves in terms of their language biography, and then the partner students in the other country could leave them comments, reactions, questions. So this was an icebreaker getting to know you as part of Plurilingual Europe. The second task was about teaching experience. So the French students had just come back from a 3-week teaching placement doing teaching observation. And the Dutch students, some of them had some teaching experience, some of them didn't have teaching experience. The pre-task, we asked the students in a Moodle forum to describe the teaching experience or teaching observation experience they had. So here it was really interesting. The students were talking about different classes they'd observed, how it fit in with their teacher training modules. What we were saying at university, could they see that directly in the classroom, or was it quite different? And then they had their first synchronous encounter using Teams video conferencing platforms. And we asked the students to discuss the different educational systems, similarities, differences, approaches, what was happening in language classrooms in both countries, and then to personalize it. So to go back to the Moodle forums before they met each other, see what their partner had written, and then try to ask more personal questions about what they'd put on the Moodle forum. The third task was using Frame VR, so a low immersion virtual reality platform. Here we asked the students if they could asynchronously, so in the different geographical groups, record a machinima. A machinima is a short recording, scripted sometimes in a virtual world using avatars. And we wanted them to do this task imagining that they were 12-year-old English language learners. So in my classroom, I asked, first of all, the trainee teachers to put themselves in the shoes of a 12-year-old language learner. They just come back from teaching placements, so some of them used that to inspire the student personas that they developed. Others based it somewhat on themselves. We learned through interviews. But here we can see I've got issues with learning things by heart, but I love talking in English, but not writing. I like video games. I'm an introvert. And then talks a little bit about her bilingual background, her multilingual background. So the students developed their personas, then they went and chose avatars in the virtual world in Frame VR, went into Frame VR and recorded short machinima in an English language village called Chatterdale, which has a fish and chip shop, a chemist, a police station, a tourist information office. So this is one of the groups in the avatars who are recording an imaginary role play in a tourist information shop as if they were 12-year-old English language students. And what was really interesting when we analysed this from a research background is to the extent they used the visual prompts in world in the role play. So for example, there was a map, there were posters in the tourist information shop, but also they looked outside, out of the window and said, oh, it's sunny, so maybe we should go to the castle and the beach rather than to the museum. And so it was really interesting to see how they drew on the different types of multimodal clues that are in the environment to develop their role play or their machinima. The fourth task was the last collaborative task was to ask the trainee teachers to develop a virtual exchange task that they could potentially use with their partner. So the pre-task, we asked them on a Moodle platform to both put forward a class profile of a class who they knew, so either on their teaching placement or that they were teaching, and think about the program, the learning objectives, the pedagogical objectives, where they were with this class, etc. And then in a Teams meeting using a video conferencing platform, we asked them to develop a task based on the eLive task design protocol. We asked them to design collaboratively a virtual exchange task for this class. What was really interesting, so we gave them the possibility to use any of the technologies that they themselves had experienced in the exchange, so Flips, Team, Frame VR. It was really interesting to see how they reused those technologies, but also based their task design on things that they'd seen during the course. And so here I chose the tourist information task that they adapted for their students. And they actually went back to their own role play and looked at the type of language they were using to then develop their linguistic objectives. After each task, I talked a little bit about post-task reflection. This was the post-task reflection sheet. We asked them to think about task, communication, collaboration, the intercultural experience, and the digital tools they'd used. They didn't have to reply to all of these questions. This was thought-provoking, inspirational questions to get them to reflect on the process, asking them to look back at the task. What had they completed? What had they achieved? What had went well? Were there any intercultural communication problems? But then saying, what would I do next time? But both individually and as a team. And then what would I keep from what was successful? So not just analyzing what didn't go so well, but analyzing what's successful. What would I keep individually and as a team? And what we're going to bring in this year are more questions to do with professional development about when I go into schools and I'm a full-time teacher, how could this apply to my classroom? Because I think that's the step that we didn't quite get to last year. So Kristi's going to take over.
Is it working? Okay, so we did this. We included this experience in our both courses, and we wanted, of course, to know how the pre-service teachers have experienced themselves, the project. So we had challenging things and positive feedback. So they all were positive about their cultural learning, of learning more about different school systems, working, of course, with peers internationally, learning new tools such as Frame and Flip. None of them have used these tools before, and reflecting about what this implies for their future teaching. So now we have some quotes. So the tasks. Ciara has been describing the tasks. So what they said is that the tasks were appropriate for the work we had to do, and that the overall project was enriching and interesting. And many of those students shared this opinion. Enjoying, which is really also very much related to engaging. I enjoyed meeting my peer and learning about her school system and working together with her, doing things, achieving the task development, sharing information about the different school systems. Another student saying, I liked almost everything, being able to exchange with someone different from me, and using several different platforms. So the tools again. We live in a highly digitalized world, and we have many tools at our disposal. But these ones, so the Flip, which are really very easy to use, and to use them and integrate them into your teaching, or Frame VR, we will be having this afternoon a workshop on that, was also an eye-opener for many of them. Another quote about the tools, and this student is saying, the tools that I will surely be using in the future in my teaching. And that's something that we want to achieve, that they learn from this experience, that they reflect on how is this done, and then they use it in the future with the future students, such as Michelle, I recognize you, who wrote the master thesis with me about virtual exchange, and now you are doing that with our own students at school, so which is really, really great. So that's what we want to achieve with our students. Yeah, good. And look at this last quote. I ask myself, doing these kinds of exchanges, a lot of questions about my future career, reflection, which is so important. Not just doing and not reflecting and not thinking about, but what does it imply for my future as a teacher? I could see things from a different perspective, and it is interesting experience needed in the teacher formation, so in teacher training institutions. So that's our message to all teacher training institutions and colleagues, indeed. Challenges, of course. And when we engage in these kinds of projects, we face always challenges. Well, the workload and timing, that was very high for many of them. And it is related to conflicting with exams and having multiple deadlines, because they had to do pre-tasks, tasks, reflections, and there were so many deadlines. So that was like a little bit scary for some of them, or too much for some of them. this is something that the next point is something that we are noticing that it happens at all levels, at school level, at university level. If I am engaged and my partner is not engaged, then it demotivates me. So that's something that we are seeing, that it happens at all educational levels. And the question to us is how to prepare them. Yeah, because if you have a very motivated partner, okay, yeah, that's very fine, that's nice. But what can you do to motivate and to involve your partner so that he takes or she takes an engaging attitude? So that's something that we need to think about. Technical issues, technology was not always working properly for some of them. The task instructions were not that clear, and there was somebody dropping out from the study. So, and that's an issue because these students, and I think it happened to you, Malorie, yeah, our student in Utrecht just dropped out, and it had influence for your exchange. This is important because that's why we are doing these innovative activities. Okay, so we ask them, I would like to use virtual exchange with my students in the future. And look at this, strongly agree, 27%, agree, 54%. Yeah, so most of them are thinking, this is valuable, that this is something that I want to do with my students in the future. And now we have Malorie, who is a student from Clermont-Auvergne, and she's going to share the experiences, her experiences, students' experiences.
So I was a trainee teacher, so I participated to the eLife project. So Cara is one of my teachers. So I had to put myself in the place of our pupils, future pupils, 12 years old, for example. Can't read. So I discovered the platform Flip, which I didn't know at all at the moment. And it was a reassuring tool to get to know our pen pals as a first step towards the project. So we could get to know each other better, know about their language background. They had some stories about things that happened to them, about communication issues, and we could compare this to how we negotiate meaning in French, for example, or just in English as a lingua franca. Next, we could have exchanges on Moodle and Teams. So my favorite part of this project was when we could use Teams with our pen pals, because we had the chance to discuss things and to exchange more about how we see our role as teachers, as students as well. And I could directly ask questions to my pen pal about their language background. So this is one thing I said. And yes, the differences between our school systems, it's very different in the Netherlands and in France. And the path to become a teacher is also very different. Next, for the V task design, it trained us to create a task collectively. So as trainee teachers, it was our first year of being trainee teachers. We were still learning how to create a task, just to create a task. So to create a task collectively through Teams with somebody who's not a native French speaker or even an English native speaker. It was very interesting. It was more difficult than doing this directly with our classmates in France, though it was very interesting because very quickly we could see that we had the same goals in creating tasks and the same point of view on how we should teach our pupils to really take advantage of all their competence. Next, the reflection exercises after each task. We really took the time to answer all the questions, and after a few tasks, we really changed how we perceived our activities. Because when we did the next tasks, we had the reflection task we will have to do right after in mind. So we could ask questions we wouldn't have asked ourselves at all if we didn't have the reflection task after. And it had a consequence on how we did the task later. Overall, it was a very motivating experience because I didn't know Frame VR at all, but as soon as we landed on the platform, we felt like our pupils. We felt like 12 years old again. And it was very interesting to create an avatar and to be put into realistic, semi-realistic setting to create a task. It was easier to imagine an activity thanks to this background. And in the future, so I wish to participate in projects like this one with my students, because we know that the intercultural competence is very important, not just the communicative competences are the competences to help our pupils to develop. And the guidelines and the tools given by the eLife project are tools that we learned to use as trainee teachers, and we know how to now maybe use it in the future, use them in the future. And it was motivating for us to create these activities. So of course it's quite easy to imagine that our pupils will be more engaged and motivated as well. It would be a way to add meaning and authenticity to these exchanges, because yes, especially Frame VR, using Teams, it's a true and synchronic exchange with an English native speaker or not. To have enough computers, yes. So I'm going to talk about limits and the possibility to regularly gather my students in a computer room could be a problem sometimes in schools. However, exchanges like these, like the ones I experienced with eLife, do not require to download additional devices or software. So it's not something that's expensive either. So I mean, it's as long as you have computers and a computer room and the chance to gather all your students in the same room, you can easily take part into projects such as eLife, even if it takes a lot of time to prepare. So, thank you. Should I?
Well, we have 1 minute for questions, for comments. I don't know whether you want to know anything specific, any observation. Yeah, Kurt? Yeah, master's degree. It was a part of our curriculum, so we had some papers and some chapters, let's say, talking about TBLT and the principles of task design. Also based on previous studies we had carried out with Intil and Tekola, what is an engaging task. So that was new for both of them, and it was a part of the content of the courses at both ends. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of input. Yeah.
So, in fact, within eLife, we've developed teacher education modules using Genialise about intercultural development, task design for engagement, motivation. And so not last year, but in the previous year, the students collaborated doing the Genialise, which was more theoretical input. And then there were Padlets where they could asynchronously give feedback to each other. Last year, the Genialise were offered to them and the Padlets weren't used as much, but the theoretical input was the same for both students because we were using these Genialise, which we developed together during the project.
Jules, and she's asking whether the master students had a chance to test the task they designed with the students, and whether they got any feedback from the students.
Yes. So unfortunately, the course, due to time constraints, is just before the Christmas exam period. So we didn't actually have the chance to test the tasks that were developed. What would be amazing if we had the time to do it would be to have the trainee teachers then enact their own tasks that they developed in small groups, to be able, a bit like what Rick was saying this morning, to be able to pinpoint, where are the constraints, where there are the limitations, and what could we put into place to improve these or overcome those in a more iterative cycle. So yeah, that's a great question.
And that's actually what we communicated with them, I think it is working, with the students, that they could be using these tasks for the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
But unfortunately, they're not tested within the course itself, because it comes at the end of the semester. If we're able to move it up in the semester because of timetabling, then yeah, we'd absolutely do that.
And in our case, we have a 7-week program, so which is impossible for us to do everything. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? No? So I think that we will have a 15-minute break. Yeah, so those following us online, you can join us in Frame VR. So go to our website, and there you have the direct link to the Frame VR. You can have and enjoy there a virtual coffee and talk to other avatars. Yeah, so we will continue at 11:15. Thank you.